From Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Secretary. I think that my background is health care, and so I know that as a physician, if you don't make the right diagnosis, you can't treat the patient correctly, and if the patient gets well, it's by luck. To the point of diagnosis, there are some individuals who believe that we're in our current situation, in the current boat we're in, because of they'll say this, because of a failure of capitalism. And a failure of deregulation. My sense, and talking with folks, is that simply isn't the case. I think that's very concerning, because if we conclude as a society that the reason we're here is because of a failure of capitalism and a failure of deregulation, then I suggest that the solutions that we'll come up with will not, in fact, correct the problem. Would you comment on those two matters? Do you believe we're where we are because of a failure of capitalism?
No, I would not use that phrase.
Do you believe we're where we are because of a failure of deregulation?
To some extent we are. I think we screwed up regulation is a simple way to say it.
By having a system that wasn't flexible or nimble and wasn't mined in the store? Is that?
Partly that, but partly we had a system where parts of the system people that were crawling over these institutions yet didn't prevent excessive risk-taking. Parts of the system, there was nobody looking at it.
So
it's not a sensible way to run a system. So I would, it's not as elegant as the phrase they use. I'd say we just screwed up the regulatory system.
So you got folks who are crawling all over people, not doing the right regulatory job, and some products out there in the marketplace that aren't being watched.
Both institutions and markets where there were no effective constraints on risks that could threaten the economy as a whole.
So I'd agree with you, I think. If one believes that, then why wouldn't one have as a solution to simply charge the regulators that we currently have with the job of regulating the different products and institutions that are out there, as opposed to creating a new bureaucratic institution that will take all the time that it takes to get up and running, usurpation of authority from other individuals who's, I suspect we're marching down the road again of who's minding the store.
Well, I think actually we're trying to fix that, because again, right now it's hard to know who's responsible, who's principally responsible. Right. One of the virtues of accountability is nobody will be confused if we do what we're proposing about who's responsible, and that's a good place to start. If you give that responsibility to a bunch of different people, got other responsibilities, then you can't hold them accountable for performance on that.
Have you read our proposal, the proposal from the Republican side of the aisle?
I have, although I read it when it first came out, and I haven't read it again recently, but I'd be happy to go through it again.
Do you have any comment? The way that we addressed that was to take the current regulators and say, you all have to do your job, one, and if there are new products or financial institutions that are out there that aren't being watched, that somebody's got to watch them, and you're charged with determining who's going to watch them. Is there something wrong with that?
I just don't think it goes far enough. I think, again, just to do practical reality, I think that would leave the current system basically intact, and we'd be at too much risk of repeating this down the road. And I think that, again, a basic failure in our system was we left a bunch of institutions doing the same thing. Mortgages, credit cards, a bunch of credit-type products competing alongside banks where there was no effective deterrence enforcement. And I don't think you can fix this system without fixing that problem. And I don't think you can, I'm saying this more starkly than we need, but I don't think you're going to fix it by creating a committee.
Well, I would suggest that the last thing that this government needs is another regulatory agency that may, in fact, repeat the same ills of the last.
I agree. If we did that, that would be a mistake. But again, what we're proposing is take authority that is diffused around a bunch of people doing other things and move it to a central place. It's not fair to characterize that, although I understand the risk, that is some new bureaucracy we're imposing on top of the system. It's more like more accountability and clarity, so people know where to go to, you know where to go to, when you see systematic failures.
I would encourage you to take a look at our proposal. Once again, I'd love to have your feedback on it. Before my time expires, I want to address the issue of TARP, and I'm sorry I wasn't here for an earlier comment, but my understanding is that your sense and the Fed Chair's sense is that we've moved on from this remarkable threat that we had to our nation a year or so ago, and that TARP's timeline was to be temporary and finite and hopefully end at the end of this year. Are you planning on ending TARP at the end of this year?
Can I say it slightly differently? we have, because of the force of the actions that the Congress authorized we took, we did pull the system back from the edge of the abyss, and we're able to wind down some of the emergency authorities necessary to rescue the system. But we are still have a very damaged system. There's a lot of challenge ahead for the economy. As many of you observed, we're only just now seeing the economy start to grow again. And it is too early for anyone to declare victory, say this is behind us. And I think anybody who lives in this world would say that there's still a lot of pressure the system's going through. So important that we not declare victory too soon, walk this stuff back prematurely.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Kansas.